Hello and welcome to the Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker Black Mage guide. In this video I'll be covering the basics of the Black Mage shop at level 90. Together with Summoner and Red Mage, Black Mage is considered a magical DPS, often referred to as a caster. Casters focus on dealing magical damage from a range while providing a moderate amount of utility to the party. Black Mage is however an exception to this rule, as it trades some of its utility in to become one of the highest DPS jobs in the game. Black Mage rotation revolves around building resources with ice spells, which then can be spent on hard-hitting fire spells. Before we dive into the abilities and the rotation of the job, I want to talk about the gauge. At the top of the graphic there are 3 markers which are either red or blue. These indicate whether you are in your Astral Fire or Umbral Ice phase. Each marker represents 1 stack of these buffs. Next to the stacks is a timer counting down. This timer shows you the remaining time for your current phase and is refreshed by certain abilities. At the bottom left there are 3 icicles indicating your Umbral Hearts. On the bottom right and on the bottom middle you can see your Polyglot gauge and stacks. This gauge fills up slowly and grants you a stack of Polyglot. Lastly, the crystal on the left displays whether or not you can cast Paradox. Let's talk about all the actions you will need to know to play Black Mage. Blizzard 3. A long cast time ice spell that grants you 3 Umbral Ice stacks and allows you to enter the Umbral Ice phase. When playing the rotation correctly, the cast is short. Fire 3. A long cast fire spell that grants you 3 stacks of Astral Fire and allows you to enter the Astral Fire phase. When playing the rotation correctly, this cast is short instead. Blizzard 3 and Fire 3 are used to swap between your fire and ice phases. Blizzard 4. An ice spell that grants you 3 stacks of Umbral Heart. Fire 4. A fire spell that spends Umbral Fire. Paradox, a spell that refreshes your current Umbral Ice or Astral Fire phase. This spell replaces Fire 1 and Blizzard 1 on your hotbars when active. Activated by swapping between Astral Fire 3 and Umbral Ice, or by going from Umbral Ice 3 to Astral Fire, with 3 Umbral Hearts as well. Thunder 3, a damage over time debuff that has a 10% chance per damage tick to grant you Thundercloud, making the next Thunder 3 cast instant with additional on-hit damage. Despair, a long cast that consumes all of your remaining mana. It requires a minimum of 800 mana to cast. This spell ignores your Umbral Hearts and grants you 3 stacks of Astral Fire. Xenoglossy, an instant cast that can only be cast by spending a Polyglot stack. Leylines, an OGCD that puts down a zone on the arena floor for 30 seconds. Standing in this zone increases your cast speed and decreases your recast speed by 15%. Triple Cast, an OGCD that allows the next 3 spells to have no cast time. Swift Cast, an OGCD that allows the next singular spell to have no cast time. Sharp Cast, a 30-second buff that whilst active buffs some of your other spells, like guaranteed procs on your Paradox cast while in Astral Fire, and higher potency on the initial damage of your Thunder 3. Mana Font, an OGCD that restores 30% of your mana at any point. Amplifier, an OGCD that grants you a stack of Polyglot instantly. Ethereal Manipulation, an OGCD that allows you to pull yourself to a targeted allied player. Transpose, swaps your current Astral Fire or Umbral Ice phase to the other. Umbral Soul allows you to stack up and maintain 3 Umbral Ice stacks and 3 Umbral Heart stacks. Use this during downtime so you can instantly enter your Astral Fire phase with full resources again once the target returns. The Black Mage rotation is relatively simple at its core. You simply want to repeat the following cycle. Coming out of your Astral Fire phase, you enter the Umbral Ice phase. You cast Blizzard 3 and then Blizzard 4. Cast Paradox and enter your Astral Fire phase, casting Fire 3 and then Fire 4 3 times. Paradox again to extend your Fire phase, Fire 4 3 more times, and then finally press Despair. After Despair, you enter Umbral Ice again by casting Blizzard 3 and the cycle starts over. When swapping Astral Fire to Umbral Ice, assuming you've played correctly, your next Blizzard-3 gains a substantially decreased cast time. This allows you to perform a single weave behind it. This is echoed for the times where you swap between Umbral Ice and Astral Fire and you cast your first Fire 3. There is room for an additional cost on both sides of the Paradox Refresh mid-Astral Fire for use on Thunder and our Xenoclassy if needed. It can be used during Umbral Ice without worrying about an extended ice phase. Alongside this cycle, you want to ensure your Thunder 3 is always on the target. Ideally, this is done by pairing Sharpcast with Thunder 3. This will grant you a Thundercloud proc, which you can use again with Sharpcast 30 seconds later when the dot is falling off to grant you another proc. You can continue to maintain Thunder 3 through procs this way. If you do not have a Thundercloud proc, let the dot fall off completely before refreshing Thunder 3 again. For the following abilities, on cooldown means that you use it the next available weave slot, and for when it makes the most sense to use the ability, all whilst trying to get out as many uses as possible. Use Amplifier on cooldown and ensure you will never overcap on Polyglot stacks by spending them on Xenoglassy whenever you are about to overcap. Since you are able to hold 2 charges of Polyglot, you can ensure you have 1 for movement situations. Use Mana Font on cooldown at the end of your Astral Fire phase after casting Despair to cast an additional Fire 4 and an additional Despair. Simply use ley lines on cooldown as well wherever possible. Naturally delay the ability if it means you will not gain as much usage out of it due to movement intense mechanics occurring as it comes off cooldown. A good Black Mage is able to plan around these mechanics whilst maintaining as high as possible late line uptime. Naturally, Black Mages have a preferred way to open the fight. There are a few different openers available, however, those are outside of the scope of this guide. Therefore, I will only talk about the Fire 3 opener, often referred to as the general purpose opener. Start off by casting Sharpcast 12 seconds prior to pulling. Then cast Fire 3 about 4 seconds prior to pulling. Instantly use Thunder 3 into triple cast. Use Fire 4, drink your Tincture. Use Fire 4 again, use Amplifier and deploy your ley lines. Use Fire 4 again and use Swift Cast. Use Fire 4 again and cast Triple Cast. Now refresh your Astral Fire phase by casting Despair. Use Mana Font and go back into casting Fire 4 and another Sharpcast. Use Despair one more time and enter your Umbral Ice phase by casting Blizzard 3. Use your Xenoglassy, Paradox and Blizzard 4. Around this time the raid buffs are about to fall off, so refresh your Thunder 3 to snapshot them and hold on to the proc for the next Sharpcast window. Here's an example of that being done. Black Mage's AoE is relatively simple. For 2 targets cleave, replace Xenoglassy with Foul, Blizzard 3 with High Blizzard 2, Fire 3 with High Fire 2, Despair by Flare and maintain Thunder 3 on both targets. In situations where you can hit 3 or more targets, simply cycle through the following rotation. High Blizzard 2, Freeze, Thunder 4, High Fire 2 3 times, and then Flare twice. 2 things worth noting. Try to align Triple Cast to instant cast both flares of it. Skipping a High Fire 2 to achieve this is encouraged. And then use Mana Font after your second flare to cast a third flare. It is worth mentioning that Sharpcast also works on the AoE version of Thunder 4. And to gain some extra weave opportunities, or if needed for movement, you can use Foul as needed. It is commonly believed that Black Mage has no utility whatsoever, but this is not the case. It is true that relative to both Summoner and Red Mage, it is lacking in utility, but the job still brings utility that is worth talking about. Mana Ward is an OGCD that creates a potent barrier on yourself up to 30% of your maximum HP. Outside of tank abilities, this is arguably the strongest self-mitigation in the game. You can use this to save your healers 1 or 2 GCDs of spot healing alone, which is very good, especially as casters can be squishy jobs. Ethereal Manipulation allows you to instantly travel to a targeted party member, allowing you to almost instantly travel up to 25 yalms. Naturally, this requires there to already be someone at the place you want to move to, but in specific scenarios it can make you hypermobile and allow you to cheese certain mechanics. You can also instantly move to your deployed ley lines by using Between the Lines, allowing you to quickly move to the party member for a mechanic using Ethereal Manipulation, and then return to your ley lines within 2 GCDs, despite it being up to 50 yalms of distance. Alongside the other 2 casters, Black Mage gains access to the caster role actions. Black Mage has access to Addle, a debuff which, when applied to a target, reduces their magic damage dealt by 10% and their physical damage dealt by an additional 5%. Coordinate the usage of this ability with your healers. For progression reasons, I encourage you to be okay with clipping your GCD to apply this debuff. Surecast is your knockback immunity. It also allows you to cast spells without interruption, as some mechanics do interrupt your spells if failed. Sleep puts your target and all enemies around it to sleep. A stun-like trance which is broken upon taking damage. This ability is mostly useless outside of niche content like Deep Dungeons. Lucid Dreaming restores mana over its duration. Sadly, the way Black Mage works, this ability doesn't have any notable use outside of higher end non-standard optimizations. There are a few things I wish to mention that didn't fit into any specific category, but I still believe are important to mention. For the latest Best in Slot gear set, check the Icy Veins guide or the Balanced Discord's research channels. If you have high ping, it might be difficult to prevent clipping your GCDs. This makes the job perform slightly worse. However, there are ways to deal with this. For PC users, you can use No Clippy or XIV Alexander to increase the spell queue window, and for both PC users and console users, you can use a VPN to get a better route to the server, possibly reducing your ping that way. For more information, you can check the Balanced Discord. XIV Analysis is a useful tool that helps you analyze your rotation. Simply put in your FF logs report to see what you can improve upon. I recommend using it frequently while learning the job. Special thanks to Rika and Sylvie and the rest of the Balance staff with helping creating this guide. Subscribe for more guides and Final Fantasy XIV content.